Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. This is City Talk. No bid contracts, lack of parental involvement, a new school reorganization, school bus routing fiasco. What's going on in the public schools? Who's watching? One person who certainly is watching New York City public schools is public advocate Betsy Gotbaum. That's her job, to oversee the operation of New York City government. The public advocate is here to talk about the schools and other matters of policy and politics. Before being elected public advocate in 2001, Betsy was the president of the New York Historical Society, and before that, commissioner of New York City's Department of Parks and Recreation. Welcome back,
Thank you.
Madam
It's
Public
nice to be
Advocate.
here.
Before we get to the schools and before we get to the public advocacy project, which I certainly want to talk about, the headlines. Facing 25 years, cops face justice. Sean Bell, incident and aftermath. What's your reaction both to the events and the indictments?
Well, first of all, as a New Yorker and a mother and a grandmother and a friend, I just don't understand how this family's ever going to get over the terrible loss. So it's a tremendous tragedy to the family that they won't get over. On the other hand, it's a tremendous tragedy for the police officers. Their careers are ruined. So this is just a terrible tragedy for everyone. I think that as far as the indictment goes, I think we have to wait and see what happens next. I think everybody has behaved really well. And again, it is just a sad, sad incident. But you know what? At least people have been quiet and calm, and I think that that speaks well for everybody.
Right, different tenor, different time in New York City.
Different tenor, and I have to give the mayor credit for that. I think he has behaved really well. I think he's reached out many, many times to the community. I mean, I think without being unfair in any way. And I think that is a direct contrast to what happened in the Amadou Diallo case.
Right, and fair trial in the city, you think that's possible?
Yeah, I think it's possible, but again, I don't understand. I don't even know, is it going to be by jury? Is it going to be by judge? Have they made that decision? I don't know the answer to that question. I think it could be fair, but again, I am not in that part of the system. So
Okay. Let's get to the public schools, an area where you and the mayor have not necessarily been on the same page. You're not a big fan of the Department of Ed. You and the mayor, in fact, have had some give and take over the last months. Let's start with the reorganization. You've been very, very vocal about the problems with this third reorganization of the schools. Talk about that.
Well, first of all, if the second reorganization was so successful as the Department of Ed says they are, why in the world do you reorganize a third time? It just causes disruption. It causes confusion. Parents are confused. Kids are confused. So why did we need to have this third reorganization? I still don't understand it. And I really don't understand why all of these consultants, these no-bid contracts, all these consultants down there are really the ones that are running these schools. Now, again, Doug, to me, what do they know about our school system, New York City school system? And to me, the best example of how they don't know our New York City public school system is the school bus route fiasco. I mean, everybody who lives in New York City, particularly people who live in Queens, know you don't have children crossing Francis Lewis Boulevard.
Or Queens Boulevard.
Or Queens Boulevard. I wouldn't cross them. And so why would you have bus routes changed in January? Point that out. Why would you do that? Nobody has ever answered that question. So I go back to consultants made the suggestion based on a computer printout. By the way, they had done the same thing in St. Louis.
Right.
The same thing happened in St. Louis. They did it here. And to me, that shows that the people who are running the school system don't really know what they're doing.
And let's get personal about this. Joel Klein, his tenure as chancellor.
Well, I don't want to get personal about Joel because I think his intentions...
Be institutional.
Institutional. I believe that sooner rather than later, we're going to have to see what are the real scores? What are the real graduation rates? There's all this confusion. Is it 43% graduation rate, as the state says, or is it 58% graduation rate, as the city says? All of those things have to be looked at very carefully in the next couple of months, and then we'll see how Joel is really doing.
I mean, and is he capable of moving the system forward, or, you know, are the mistakes made and the policy pursued just not working?
Well, I hope that he can learn from his mistakes, but I haven't seen Alvarez and Marcel leaving New York City public school system
this is the firm who set up the bus routes.
This is the firm who set up the bus routes and many other things, including some special education, some reorganization of special education, which we will have a report about later on this week.
And you have testified before the council on these no-bid contracts. I mean, you talked about $270 million of no-bid contracts, with the city essentially skirting the competitive bidding process. Why are they doing it?
Well, first of all, because they can. They say that because they're a state chartered institution, they don't have to abide by the city procurement laws. And then at the same time, they don't have to abide by the state procurement laws because they're a city institution. So they can have it both ways. I think this is something that has to be looked at when we look at mayoral control in 2009. I think it's a very important issue. You can't have no bid contracts to that extent with nobody looking at them, nobody able to do anything about them. There's no transparency. Why in the world would you hire a firm for $17 million that had completely messed up St. Louis? And they're really, to me, that is a question that nobody has answered.
And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, it's reported that the chancellor didn't know that they had screwed up in St. Louis. Is that?
I was told that. I was told that he did not know that. And when I asked the question, when I referred to the question at the hearing, I got a confusing answer.
Okay, so we've got reorganization, we've got this no bid contracts, cell phone ban. You've been on the mayor and back and forth on this. What's the story? Well,
the story for me as public advocate is that parents, many parents, contacted us through our ombudswoman's unit about how this was terrible for them. I mean, we kept getting so many calls in that first week that obviously we had to do something. So we set up a helpline, a hotline for parents to call. It was actually an email hotline. And we got, in 1 week, like 100 emails about this issue. So parents were really upset. They were never consulted. They didn't know what was going on. And many parents, particularly parents of children with special needs, and that happens to be something I'm very passionate about. It's kind of an issue. It's kind of one of my issues. Parents of kids with special needs were terrified. You know, they had kids who, when the bus routes happened, can you imagine, with a kid not having a cell phone, not knowing how he was going to get home from school? There were parents who literally lost their kids. And my only point here is, again, if you had some form of parental involvement where the parents could say what they believe and have their issues talked about and their opinions considered. Parents' opinions were never considered.
Yeah. Okay. Hypothetically, you've got in 2009, legislation will either extend mayoral control or in some way modify it. If you were advising the folks who were doing the legislation, what might be some of your suggestion at this particular, given your knowledge at this particular point?
Oh, at this particular point, I would, first of all, I would close the loopholes in contracting. This contracting where you can have it both ways. You're the state agency, you don't have to go by the city rules. That would be one loophole I would close. I would put in some form of a board or the chancellor being appointed by, I mean, responsible to, appointed by the mayor perhaps, but responsible to a board who is appointed by somebody.
Okay.
Because parents have, for example, let me give you an example. As bad as the old board was, if the cell phone ban had come into existence, or even the no-bid contracts, there would have been a hue and cry in front of the board, and guess what? It would have been stopped. And in some of these instances, particularly the no-bid contracts, that's important. Parents have a right to know what's going on, as do teachers, as do administrators.
Go ahead.
And have a right to be heard.
And in fact, a March Quinnipiac poll shows that the majority of New York City voters prefer to have an independent board than mayoral control. So is this in the wind here?
You know, Doug, I think what will happen is very soon there will be a lot of people, professionals, pulling together to do a really independent, and I say independent analysis of mayoral control, to go to the legislature and say, here's what we think, please listen to us, and can take into consideration these things that we have found. And I'm working with some professionals, many of whom you know, to actually do a very independent analysis of what is going on. And I believe that's the way it should go.
Okay, let's do a little politics and then come back.
Okay.
May of 2009, I mean, you know, there are a number of, you know, the whispered candidates out there, and one of the names that one hears in the background is one Betsy Gotbaum. Now, without getting into that, we'll save that to the end.
Okay.
If you were the mayor, what would you do differently as far as the schools are concerned?
Oh, well, first I would stop the reorganization. Second, I would get rid of Alvarez and Marcel. I would fire them. Third, I would put in place a system whereby the parents would have the capacity to have that, not only to talk and to voice what they need, but to have some teeth so that they can get done what they need to get done. And I know that's complicated, but there has to be some process by which that can happen. I mean, it really is important, Doug. The institutions now, the parental institutions, just aren't working.
Right.
They don't have the capacity to do. Nobody's listening to them. It's really tough, and that would be the third thing I would look at very carefully. How do you do that?
Okay, one of the projects that I know you're working on, because we at Baruch are working with you, is the Public Advocacy Project. Explain to the viewers what the Public Advocacy Project is, what it's intended to do, how unique it is, how you love to work with Baruch, how you love working with me. No. Talk about the Public Advocacy Project.
Your focus groups were the best, but I'll get to that in a minute. The Public Advocacy Project is part of my whole overall job as public advocate, which is to make sure that New Yorkers get the services that they should be getting from government. And as part of that, we are trying to find out what is it that people really feel about the services that they're getting. Mm-hmm. Now, the city has its own ways of measuring services called the MMR, the Mayor's Management Report, and that's great. But it's all about outputs. It's about, I was Parks Commissioner, I looked at how many parks we'd cleaned, how many playgrounds. That's from my perspective, and quite frankly,
from a manager's point of view.
From the manager's point of view, and quite frankly, I tried to make it look pretty good, right? Citizen satisfaction survey is a very different animal. It's how do people feel about the service that you're giving them. So what we've done, working with Baruch, we have brought in about, I think it was 75 civic leaders from all over the city. Heavy participation from Queens, by the way.
But we know.
It's fabulous. And they are helping us design the satisfaction survey along with Baruch. And what we will do, and we're hoping to work with the administration, so far we've had very positive meetings with them, and do the following. Let's just take parks as an example, because I was Parks Commissioner.
Sure.
Let's say that in Queens, the parks, people say, you know what, that park is terrible. Even though the MMR says it's great, that park is terrible. And the Citizen Satisfaction Survey will help us find out why. Mm-hmm. Then we'll find out there's a park that's terrible in Brooklyn, and the Citizen Satisfaction Survey will show us why. We will then sit down with these surveys, with the commissioner and whomever else he or she wants, and probably the Office of Operations, and we will go through all of these issues that come up in that particular park survey, and we'll say, hey, look what we found. The commissioner, we hope, will say, hey, we're going to fix that. And then we can all stand up and say, we really found out what people think about the service they're getting, and we're going to do something about it and make it better. And that's what I believe is good government.
So you're talking about an annual survey of a large number of New York City residents to determine their perceptions and evaluations of city services. Why hasn't New York City done this before? Other cities have done it before.
I know. I don't really know why. I think Peter Vallone Sr., when he was Speaker, did it. But
funded 2 years worth of surveys.
Funded 2 years of surveys, but I don't quite know. I don't know quite what happened to it.
It wasn't institutionalized,
it wasn't institutionalized.
In the same way that it might be in the public advocate's office.
I think in our office, because we are independent, and yet I believe the point of this office is you find out what people need, what they want, and give it to them. That's really the role of the public advocate. That's good government, Doug. I'm saying to the mayor's office, look, I'm not going to criticize you because that park looks bad or those people don't like that park. What I'm doing is I'm saying to you, here's a problem. Let's fix it. I'll help you fix it together, and this is better. Our constituents will be happy.
And you've had conversations, your office has had conversations with the Mayor's Office of Operations.
Just last week.
Is there a possibility that we could have a joint public advocate, mayoral, something after years of, well, certainly with your predecessor, years of conflict between the two offices?
Well, you see, it's the Betsy Gotbaum theory of the Public Advocacy's office. It's how I've tried to conduct it, which is I truly believe if we can collaborate, if we find out what the real problems are and what people think about them, and we work on them together, yeah, I think we don't have to be fighting and screaming and yelling at each other. I think we can actually work something out and make things better for people.
Yeah, but this is a little editorializing. The mayor doesn't seem to like criticism. For example, when you and the council criticized, the bus routing, and you've criticized the reorganization, he says, well, those people don't know what they're doing. They never ran anything. How do you respond?
Well, the mayor got very personal on that with me, and my response was, hey, look at my resume, Mr. Mayor. But the way I respond is, I'm looking at what you're doing in education. That's your principle. You're saying your whole administration is going to be judged on that. And I'm sitting here saying, you got to do better in education if you're going to make it better. And I'm just trying to tell you some of the things that I hear from parents. What's wrong? You should fix them. In fact, I think criticism, I don't know. I think it's good to get criticism because then you can make things better and fix them.
Now, this survey is going to have both positive results and negative results. I mean, no matter who the mayor is, you don't want to hear negative results. So what happens here?
Well, my point, and I think the Office of Operations agrees, is we look at the bad things and we look at the good things, and then we say, okay, here are the bad things, here are what we're going to do to fix them. I'm not going to stand on the steps of City Hall and say, gotcha, you didn't do this, you didn't. What I'm going to do is say, here's what we learned, here, let's fix it, and then we'll stand on the steps of City Hall together 3 months later and say with Baruch, look, we came up with this plan and we fixed it, and that park is now what those people in Bensonhurst want.
Well, this would be an interesting experiment to see if, in fact, we could have that collaboration between the mayor and the public advocate. What else is the office doing besides education? I know you're doing stuff in the criminal justice system. You're dealing with abuse, both child and spousal abuse. Talk about the rest of the Betsy Gotbaum agenda.
First of all, one of the issues that I've been very, very involved with is the whole issue of the family court and Agency for Children's Services and what's going on there since the tragic death of Nix Marie Brown. I believe that a lot has been done. I think that the focus for a while was on the Agency for Children's Services. There have been reforms done there. I think they're good reforms. There's some other things that need to be done. But I think we have to focus on the family court itself. And next week we're having a forum at the Hunter School of Social Work where the commissioner, John Mattingly, will be talking about his reforms. We'll have a judge from the family court plus other experts in the area. And we're basically going to talk about what's happened, what reforms are needed, what needs to be done still, and how we can do it.
And you were an acting family court judge?
Last week, I was 2 weeks ago. I went and sat in the family court in Brooklyn. It was incredible.
I mean, you sat up there?
Yes, I sat with the judge. I sat with the judge.
And what did you learn?
I learned that much too much of judges' time is spent on things like scheduling hearings, scheduling this lawyer, that lawyer, the people to come back. It is, in one of the cases that I sat on with her, the father, in this case it was the father of the abused child, was in Rikers. And he was supposed to have been brought into court that day. Well, they couldn't find him. And the amount of time that the judge had to spend figuring out how to find this guy. Then everything gets adjourned. Then it gets...
And the dislocation for the other participants in the case.
And there were 3 lawyers. There's the lawyer for the child, the lawyer for the father, and then I guess the lawyer for the court. I mean, the guard, and that's for the... Yeah, there were 3 lawyers there. And everything had to be rescheduled. It took 15 minutes just to schedule.
So that's one area of possible reform.
Yes.
And Judge Kaye, Chief Judge, has been very supportive of these types of reforms. Is there any possibility that you can get what you want?
Well, I know Judge Kaye and have talked to her about this, and she knows about the forum. She's going to be in Albany. Otherwise, she said she would be there. But she's very much in favor of the kinds of reforms that were coming up. And again, Doug, we are going to try to come up with some really positive programs and projects and go to the legislature and say, you got to give us more family court judges. You got to. I think there was only 1 that was added. So, I mean, we need more family court judges. We need more help in the courts. I think, again, the city has done a good job of some reforms with ACS, the Agency for Children's Services. Now we've got to get the family court together, and then we've got to see where we are.
Okay. I've always been interested in the institution of public advocate as public advocate. And as you know, there's been argument from the moment it was created that it should be abolished. What does it do? Now with 311, why do we need a public advocate? Why do we need a public advocate?
Well, I believe we need a public advocate because you always need oversight over a very, very powerful mayor. I actually believe you need oversight over the council. Unfortunately, I don't have that capacity at this point. What I do believe is this office should be independent, that the mayor, neither the mayor nor the council have control over the budget, that this budget now is controlled by the mayor. So if the mayor cuts my budget, I have to go and beg to the council. The independent budget office is the model through which or about which I speak all the time. First of all, what's really important about this office and why I'm so passionate about it is we help people. We help the most vulnerable New Yorkers. People call 311. Yes, it's a fabulous service. But we actually help people through. We walk them through their programs, their problems. We get them their food stamps. We get their water bills reduced because they've gone up 35%. We help seniors get their SCREE, their rent reductions. And to me, this is a really important aspect of this office. It's a citywide office. Remember, councilmen and women have constituent services. But we do it for the whole city. So we find out that food stamps offices aren't open after 5, and most of the people who are getting food stamps are the underlined working poor, and they're not open on Saturday. I had a meeting last week with Commissioner Doar, and he said, you're right, we're going to try to have new office openings and open them later. And this is the kind of thing that I believe is so important for New Yorkers, is to have a voice there, not always criticizing, not the municipal nag, but really looking at what's right and what's wrong. And I believe, I'm so passionate about this office.
We're writing a charter in our imagination. What would you add to your office? I'm writing the charter. What powers, duties, responsibilities ought a revised public advocate's office look like?
First and foremost, the office ought to have an independent budget. A set budget that it always gets, that can't be changed on the whim. If the mayor gets angry at the public advocate, cannot cut the budget. Okay. Same thing with the council. I mean, it should have an independent budget. What other power should it have? I don't believe it necessarily has to have a subpoena power because...
Yeah, that was my... Go ahead.
I don't think so, because that would have to be granted by the legislature, first of all. The city council has subpoena power. They rarely use it. I think they've only used it once. I'm not so sure that it's that important with this office. This office is important. What's important is that it be independent, that it can help people. And I think having more and more people available on a citywide basis to help people is key. Another thing, we need more people in the ombuds unit, and we also need it to be independent, so that can never get cut. I have to keep emphasizing that. Okay.
Let's talk about mayoral politics in 2009. Well,
lots
is there a possibility that we might see I mean, you know, all you folks are being thrown out of a job with term limits. You, Billy Thompson, the controller, the mayor, 30-some odd of the city council members. What do you do? You're term limited out.
Well, first of all, I've had such a varied career, Doug, that I'm not worried about getting a job or having a job.
No, we're not talking about getting a job. What do you want to do? Because you're not going to retire.
No, I'm never going to retire. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm really focusing on this job, on trying to make the Office of the Public Advocate be such that nobody will say anymore, no, we don't need that office. And I'm really focusing all my attention on that. I know it sounds like I'm being cute. I'm not being cute. I honestly don't know what I'm going to do. You probably can figure out why. And second of all, I really want to focus the next 2.5 years on just getting this office where it should be.
Okay.
So
what's coming up? What can we expect from the Public Advocate's office over the next couple of months? What are you focusing on?
We're focusing really a lot on education. Special ed, we're going to have a report out very, very soon on what's sort of going on in special ed. We have a report.
Give me a little taste.
A little taste is that special education, the reform of special education is not a particularly good reform. The one 2 years ago wasn't a good one, and it's still not good. And that's basically what one of the things we find out is when people who have special needs call the parent coordinators, they don't get called back. They don't get in contact.
Which gets to an earlier problem that we talked about.
Yes. And if you have a child with special needs, or you have special, you need to find out where the child has to go for whatever, and you can't get through to somebody, to me, that's bad. So that's one of the things we're going to be talking about in our report. We're looking at the whole issue of high school seats, the capital budget building high school seats.
Yeah, you would issued a report that suggests that if the administration is serious about this raising the graduation rate to 70%, their school construction plans are simply inadequate.
That's right.
What was their response? I mean, the numbers look really straightforward in your report.
I thought the numbers were very straightforward.
And?
They said it was absurd. That what we said was absurd, that it was apples and oranges. I don't know what was apples and oranges. It was very straightforward. You have X number of kids who need X number of seats. If you're going to have 70% graduation rate, you know how many little seats you need for those little bottoms, right? And we just saw that they have not planned well. If you don't plan, you're going to plan. If you don't plan well, you're going to plan for failure. And that's all we said, and they said it was absurd.
Well, we'll look and wait to hear this report and see what, in fact, is the story, and we want you back.
I come back anytime, thank you.
Excellent. My pleasure.
Thank you, sir.